Wanwan's heart is acting up again and she can't cope without me. Either the wedding is postponed or we get a divorce, take your pick. Cheng Linfeng issued the command with his usual arrogance. I calmly agreed. A month later, after accompanying his damsel in distress on a world tour, he returned to the country. Tell Song Yangyang I'm finally free for the wedding, he told his circle. His friend shot him a look of pure pity. She married that devoted childhood friend of hers a month ago. You didn't know. My name is Song Yangyang. I've been married to Cheng Linfeng for 3 years, though in his eyes, I probably have less presence than the barista at the coffee shop downstairs from his office. At least the barista gets a good morning, Director Cheng every day. Me. Sometimes days go by without him even remembering I exist in this house. Today was our 3rd wedding anniversary. I'd started preparing a month in advance, booking the restaurant, buying a new dress, even taking a baking class to make a cake. It was a bit lopsided, but every bite was made by my own hands. I started waiting at 5 in the evening. By 9, the frosting on the cake had begun to collapse. I didn't dare light the candles. I was afraid that if they flickered out, I'd just keep relighting them until I was left with nothing but a dismal puddle of wax. Finally, at 10:15, I heard the sound of his car in the driveway. I stood up, smoothed my skirt, and took a deep breath, forcing a smile onto my face. The door opened and Cheng Linfeng walked in. Bringing the chill of the night with him, he paused when he saw me standing in the living room, his brow furrowing slightly. Still up, I walked over to take his coat, trying to keep my voice light and natural. I was waiting for you. Do you know what today is? He loosened his tie as he headed upstairs, not even bothering to look back. What about today? It's our 3rd anniversary. He paused for a fraction of a second before continuing his ascent. Oh, 3 years already, that was fast. I stood there frozen, clutching his coat as his silhouette disappeared around the landing. A faint scent of perfume lingered on the fabric, not the brand he usually wore. I recognized that scent. It was the signature fragrance of Su Wn. A wave of bitter amusement washed over me. 3 years. What on earth was I still expecting? I hung up the coat and walked back to the dining room. I looked at the slumped cake, the unlit candles, and the table set perfectly for 2. Forget it. I sat down alone and picked up my chopsticks, eating the meal that had long since gone cold. As I chewed, I wondered what I should say tomorrow. Should I ask for a divorce, a legal separation? Or should I keep playing the role of the deaf and blind wife? But how much longer could I keep up the act? 3 years was already an eternity. The next morning, I prepared a full breakfast. Cheng Linfeng actually sat down to eat, though he spent the entire time staring at his phone, never once glancing at me. I set my chopsticks down. Cheng Linfeng. He grunted, eyes glued to the screen. I have something to tell you. He finally looked up, his expression tinged with impatience. What now? Our wedding ceremony, when do you plan on actually holding it? He blinked, his frown deepening. The wedding, I told you. We'll talk about it once this busy season is over. That busy season had lasted 3 years. Ever since we signed our marriage papers, it was always the same excuse. I've booked the hotel for the 16th of next month, I said calmly. The invitations are written, all I need is your okay. His face darkened, he slammed his phone onto the table. Song Yangyang, what is this, an ambush? Did you even ask me if I was free? I asked. I replied. I've been asking for 3 years. You always say later. I'm done waiting. I made the decision myself. He stood up, looming over me with that familiar, stifling arrogance. Wanwan hasn't been well lately. Her heart condition flared up, and the doctor said she can't be left alone. She won't be recovered by the 16th. You expect me to just abandon her to get married? I looked up at him, and he let out a cold, mocking laugh, his tone dripping with condescension. And so either the wedding is postponed until she's better, or we get a divorce, take your pick. The contempt in his eyes was crystal clear. In his mind, I was a spineless woman who couldn't survive a day without him. He only brought up divorce to scare me, waiting for me to break down and beg for his forgiveness. I stared at his face for 5 long seconds, then I heard myself speak in a voice more peaceful than I'd ever known. Fine. He froze. I stood up and began clearing the plates. I picked divorce. His expression shifted instantly, from contempt to disbelief, and then to hot-headed rage. Song Yangyang, have you lost your mind? I say divorce and you just jump at it. You're trying to use this to threaten me. I ignored him and carried the dishes to the kitchen. I'm telling you, he shouted after me, if you walk out that door today, don't you dare think about coming back. I stopped at the kitchen door and looked back one last time. Don't worry, Cheng Linfeng, I won't be back. I put the dishes in the sink and turned on the faucet. The roar of the water drowned out the sound of his voice. In that moment, only one thought filled my mind. 3 years was enough. Cheng Linfeng didn't take me seriously. He was convinced I was just throwing a tantrum. To prove his point, he went straight back to Wanwan's side and didn't come home for a week. During that week I handled the big things. I hired a lawyer and drafted the divorce papers. The asset division was fair. I took exactly what I earned over the 3 years, and not a penny more from the Cheng estate. Then I went to see someone. His name was Chen Hao, my childhood friend. We grew up in the same compound, and he used to follow me around like a puppy. We lost touch after his family moved away, but I'd heard he'd become a successful entrepreneur and moved back to start his own firm. He was still single. We met at a quiet cafe. He was much taller than I remembered, dressed in a charcoal grey suit, radiating a calm, steady energy. When he saw me, he stood up immediately, his eyes filled with a fragile sort of joy. Yang. I sat down and got straight to the point. Chen Hao, I heard you're still single. He blinked, a self-deprecating smile touching his lips. Yeah, been busy with work. I have one question for you. I looked him in the eye. Does what you said back then still count? The look in his eyes changed instantly. I knew he remembered. The night before his family moved away when we were 18, he'd stood under my window and yelled at the top of his lungs, Yang, when I grow up and make something of myself, I'm coming back to marry you. My parents had laughed it off as a childhood crush, but standing behind the curtains watching that blushing boy under the streetlight, my heart had skipped a beat. He was silent for a long time, so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then his voice came out, raspy but firm. It counts, Yang, as long as you're willing. It will always count. I took a sip of my coffee to steady my nerves. Then I'll marry you. We'll have the wedding in 1 month. His hand shook, splashing a few drops of coffee onto the table. He didn't even notice, he just stared at me. But what about Cheng Linfeng? I'll have the divorce finalized. I interrupted. Chen Hao, I won't lie to you. Part of the reason I'm doing this is out of spite. I don't want them to have the last laugh. I want them to see that I'm not some unwanted stray you can say no. He looked at me with such tenderness and heartache that it hurt. He reached out and covered my hand with his palm was warm and dry. Yang, you don't need to explain. I accept. The reason doesn't matter. All that matters is that you're willing to be with me. At that moment, something that had been blocked inside me for 3 years finally broke free. A week later, Cheng Linfeng finally deigned to come home. I was sitting on the sofa with a manila envelope in my lap. He kicked off his shoes and saw the papers. What's that? I slid the envelope across the coffee table toward him. Divorce papers. Have a look. If there are no issues, just sign. His face stiffened. He looked at me with that haven't you had enough expression. Song Yang, are you actually serious? I'm not joking. I stood up. The asset division is all in there. My lawyer drafted it and it's more than fair. Once you sign, we're heading to the Civil Affairs Bureau to finalize the paperwork. After that, what we do and who we marry is none of each other's business. He didn't even glance at the agreement. He grabbed it, ripped it in half right in front of my face, and threw the pieces on the floor. Divorce over what? I told you Wanwan's health was failing. The wedding was just postponed. Do you really have to make such a big deal out of nothing? I looked down at the shredded paper. I didn't pick them up and I didn't get angry. Instead, I looked up at him with a level of calm I had never felt before. Cheng Linfeng, I'm not negotiating with you, I'm informing you. With that, I went upstairs to start packing. As I was folding my clothes into a suitcase, Linfeng followed me up and leaned against the doorframe, watching. Fine, pack your things. Let's see what kind of stunt you're trying to pull, he said snidely. Once you walk out that door, where is someone like you, Song Yang, going to find a husband like me? Where will you live? How will you pay for anything? You haven't worked in 3 years. Do you think the world out there has a spot waiting for you? I ignored him and kept folding. Seeing my silence, his tone grew sharper. I'm telling you, if you leave today, don't even think about coming back. Don't come crawling back crying to me later. I tucked the last item into the suitcase, zipped it shut, and straightened up to look him in the eye. Cheng Linfeng, in these last 3 years, have I ever spent a single cent of your money? He blinked, stunned. I pointed around the bedroom. This house is your premarital asset. It's in your name. I've only been a guest here. As for that card you gave me, the one you deposit 20,000 into every month, I haven't touched a penny. It's all sitting in another account. The card is in the nightstand drawer. The pin is your birthday. Every household expense over the last 3 years, the groceries, the utilities, your clothes, was paid for with my dowry and the savings from my old job. His face paled. You said I haven't worked in 3 years, right? I didn't go into an office. That's because you said it wouldn't look good for Mrs. Cheng to be out working and told me to stay home. I listened to you. I stayed here as your unpaid housekeeper, doing the laundry, cooking the meals and cleaning the house. Did I ever receive a dime in wages from you? His mouth hung open but no words came out. I picked up my suitcase and walked past him at the top of the stairs. I paused and looked back. Cheng Linfeng, I don't owe you anything, my conscience is clear. I walked downstairs. As I opened the front door, a black sedan was idling outside. Chen Hao stepped out from the driver's seat, walked over quickly to take my suitcase and asked softly, "Are you okay?" I shook my head. "I'm fine." He put the luggage in the trunk and held the passenger door open for me, shielding my head as I climbed in. From behind the windshield, I saw Cheng Linfeng rush out to the porch, looking absolutely blindsided. He clearly never imagined another man would be there to pick me up. Chen Hao got in and started the engine. As the car pulled away, I watched through the rearview mirror as Linfeng chased after us for a few steps before stopping. His figure grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared. Chen Hao glanced at me. He didn't pry, he just reached over and squeezed my hand. "Rest at my place first. Tomorrow, I'll go with you to explain everything to your parents." I leaned back into the seat, watching the city lights blur past the window, and let out a long, heavy breath. I had been holding that breath for 3 years. Finally I could breathe again. A week later, I met Cheng Linfeng at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. He was right on time. I suspect the sight of another man picking me up that night had bruised his ego enough that he wanted the divorce finalized quickly just to save face. He was wearing a black overcoat and sunglasses, looking like the world owed him a fortune. We sat before the clerk, signed the papers, pressed our thumbprints, and took the photos. The whole process took less than 10 minutes. As we walked out with our divorce certificates, he stopped me on the steps. "Song Yang Yang." I stopped and turned around. He took off his sunglasses, his eyes a messy swirl of resentment and something else I couldn't quite name. "That man who picked you up, who is he?" I looked at him and almost wanted to laugh. For 3 years of marriage, he never cared about my social life or my past. Now that we were divorced, he suddenly wanted to know, "Does it matter to you?" His face darkened. "How does it not matter? We just got divorced and you're already seeing someone. Were you cheating on me this whole time?" His talent for playing the victim was truly impressive. I looked at him calmly. "Cheng Linfeng, during that week you spent at the hospital with Su Wn, I drafted the divorce agreement, met an old friend, and decided to get married in a month. Believe what you want about whether I had someone or not, it has nothing to do with you anymore." His face turned bright red. "Married? You're marrying who?" I didn't answer. I turned and walked toward the car parked at the curb. Chen Hao was leaning against the door waiting for me. When he saw me approaching, he smiled and opened the door. Cheng Linfeng stood frozen at the entrance of the bureau, looking like he'd been struck by lightning. Before getting in, Chen Hao looked in Linfeng's direction and gave a polite nod, a brief acknowledgement. Then he slipped into the driver's seat and drove me away. In the rearview mirror, Cheng Linfeng faded into a tiny black dot. Life after the divorce was much easier than I expected. Chen Hao had an apartment on the west side of the city. Since he usually lived near his office on the east side, the place was empty. He handed me the keys and told me to make myself at home and decorate it however I liked. I didn't stand on ceremony. I moved in and started preparing for the wedding. Chen Hao suggested keeping things simple so I wouldn't get too tired, but I refused. I'm only getting married once in this life and I want it to be spectacular. I want everyone to see that I am doing more than just fine. I booked the best hotel in the city and hired the top wedding planners. I picked out the dress myself, a long train encrusted with tiny diamonds that shimmered like a galaxy under the lights. Chen Hao indulged my every whim. I said 500 guests, he said okay. I said 20 wedding cars, he said okay. I said I wanted 30,000 roses at the venue, he still said okay. At one point I couldn't help but ask, "Chen Hao, aren't you afraid I'm going to drive you into bankruptcy?" He looked at me with total sincerity. "Yang Yang, the reason I work so hard to make money is so that one day I can let you spend it however you want." My eyes stung for a moment. I turned away, pretending to look at the view so he wouldn't see. I wrote and sent the wedding invitations myself. I didn't miss a single person who needed to be there, including the wives of Linfeng's inner circle and the socialites I'd met at dinners with him. Naturally, I sent one to Cheng Linfeng too. I sent it to his office. Addressed specifically to him. I wanted him to see with his own eyes how the woman he threw away was being cherished by someone else. Within days of sending the invites, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. It was all those socialite wives. Yang, are you really getting married? Who's the groom? Yang, weren't you married to CEO Cheng? How did you? Yang, is that Chen Hao, the one from the Chen Group, the green energy tycoon worth billions? I answered them all with a calm, steady voice. We're divorced, the paperwork is done. The groom is Chen Hao, we've known each other since we were kids. Yes, that's him. I could hear the audible gasps on the other end of the line. I hung up, looked at my bright eyes in the mirror, and let a smile spread across my face. Time flew by, and soon it was the day before the wedding. I had an appointment with my best friend for one last makeup trial. When we stepped out of the bridal shop, it was already getting dark. As we waited for a car, a black van pulled up. Slowly in front of us, the door opened and a woman in a white dress stepped out. She was pale and thin, with watery eyes that seemed designed to trigger pity in anyone who saw her. It was Su Wn. She walked up to me and said in that weak, fragile voice of hers, "Sister Yang, can we talk?" My best friend immediately stepped in front of me defensively. Talk about what? There's nothing to talk about. I patted my friend's hand to show her it was okay, then I looked at Su Wn. Fine, there's a cafe nearby. You have 5 minutes. We sat at a window table. Su Wn ordered a warm water and clutched it with both hands. Remaining silent for a long time, I didn't rush her. I just sat there watching the people pass by outside. Finally, she looked up, her eyes rimmed with red. Sister Yang, I'm sorry. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She sniffed and continued. Linfeng and I, there's really nothing between us. We grew up together. He's like an older brother to me. I know he's married and I never dreamed of coming between you two. It's just my health, it's so frail, and I'm always such a burden to him. He only looks after me because he feels responsible. Watching her perform was almost entertaining. Over the last 3 years, I had heard variations of this speech dozens of times, usually relayed through third parties. Today, the leading lady had finally graced me with a private performance. And, I prompted. She bit her lip, tears brimming in her eyes. I know about the divorce, it's because of me, isn't it? Sister Yang, please don't blame Linfeng, it's all my fault. I heard you were getting married again and I know I shouldn't have come, but I couldn't help myself. I'm begging you, don't marry someone else. Linfeng loves you, he just hasn't realized it yet. I took a sip of my coffee to keep from laughing out loud. Su Wn, I said, setting the cup down and looking her straight in the eye. Do you honestly believe every woman on earth revolves around Cheng Linfeng, that we can't survive without him? She froze. My divorce has nothing to do with you and frankly nothing to do with him either. I stood up. I'm just done. I, Song Yang, have no interest in spending the rest of my life as a backup player. If Cheng Linfeng wants to treat you like a precious treasure, that's his business. To me, he is nothing. I picked up my bag to leave, then paused after a couple of steps and turned back. By the way, my wedding is tomorrow at the Hyatt, 12:18 sharp. You're more than welcome to come and watch. Bring Cheng Linfeng with you. The drinks are on me. I walked out of the cafe without looking back. Behind me, the look on Su Wan's face was priceless. The weather on my wedding day was impossibly beautiful. As sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I sat before the vanity, staring at my reflection in a daze. The woman in the mirror wore a snow-white gown, her hair swept up into an elegant chignon topped with a shimmering diamond tiara with bold red lips and a radiant glow. Every line of her face spoke of happiness. I touched my cheek and asked myself, Song Yang, do you have any regrets? Before I could even answer, I smiled. Regret what? Not rotting away in a marriage that died 3 years ago, not waiting for a man whose heart belonged to someone else to finally notice me. Don't make me laugh. My best friend burst through the door, beaming with excitement. Yang, guess who's here? I turned around. Who? The wives of Linfeng's entire inner circle, every single one of them, even the ones who used to give you a hard time, are sitting out there right now. You should have seen their faces when they saw the groom. Their jaws practically hit the floor. I smiled but said nothing. She leaned in closer and lowered her voice. Also, Cheng Linfeng is here. My hand faltered for a split second before I went back to adjusting my veil. I see. Just I see. Her eyes widened. Aren't you nervous? Aren't you dying to go out there and see the look on his face? What is there to see? I stood up and did a slow turn in front of the mirror. Whatever expression he's wearing has nothing to do with me. Before she could respond, there was a knock at the door. Chen Hao's assistant poked his head in. Miss Song, Mr. Chen wants to know if you're ready. All the guests are seated. I took a deep breath and lifted my skirt. I'm ready. The moment the wedding march began, the world fell silent. Clutching my father's arm, I walked toward the center of the hall. The room was packed. Every eye fixed on me, I could hear the hushed whispers, the gasps of admiration, and the sharp intakes of breath, but I saw none of it. My gaze was locked on the man at the end of the aisle. Chen Hao stood on the altar in a white tuxedo. His eyes shone like stars, and his smile was incredibly tender. When I reached him, my father placed my hand in his. He squeezed it tightly. His palm was slightly damp. He was actually nervous. Don't be nervous, I whispered. He leaned down and murmured into my ear. I've been waiting over a decade for this day. How could I not be nervous? My heart skipped a beat. The officiant began the ceremony, the rings, the vows. Everything was so perfect it felt surreal. You may now kiss the bride. Chen Hao looked at me with an intensity that suggested he wanted to memorize every detail of this moment. He gently lifted my veil and began to lean in. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the crowd, sharp and jarring. Wait! Every head in the room turned toward the source. Cheng Linfeng stood up, his face ashen, his eyes burning as he glared at our joined hands beside him. Su Wn looked panicked, reaching for his sleeve only to be shrugged off. The music died, the whispering stopped. The ballroom became so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I stood on the stage looking down at him. Only one thought crossed my mind. Finally, the real show begins. Cheng Linfeng stepped onto the red carpet. He was wearing a deep blue suit, his hair perfectly styled as if he had spent a long time preparing, but his expression was ghastly, pale and distorted, his eyes a messy cocktail of conflicting emotions. The guests watched his every move, some shocked, some amused, others whispering behind their hands. I stood my ground, holding Chen Hao's hand, and watched him approach with total composure. He stopped in the middle of the aisle, just a few feet away. He looked up at me, his voice sounding agonizingly hoarse. Yang, you can't marry him. Before I could speak, Chen Hao stepped forward, shielding me. His voice was low but carried to the back of the room. Mr. Cheng, this is Song Yanyan's wedding. Please show some respect. Linfeng didn't even look at him. His eyes remained locked on me. Yang, I know I was a bastard. I'm sorry. I didn't handle the situation with Wanwan well. But we were husband and wife for 3 years. Can you really be this heartless? Husband and wife for 3 years. Hearing those words from his mouth was almost comical. I stepped out from behind Chen Hao and looked down at him from the altar. Cheng Linfeng, now you remember we were married for 3 years. In those 3 years, how many times did you call me your wife? How many dinners did we share? How many anniversaries did you actually remember? His face twitched. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. You kept saying Su Wn was fragile and couldn't be without you. Fine, I understood. I cooperated. I stepped aside so you could be with her without a single complaint. But Linfeng, did it ever occur to you that I'm human, that I have a heart, that I can feel pain too? My voice wasn't raised, it was calm and steady, yet every word hit him like a physical blow. Our wedding was postponed for 3 years. Every time I brought it up, you had an excuse. Work was too busy, a project was too tight, or Su Wn was sick. Fine, I waited. But now, when I finally decide I'm done waiting, you storm into my wedding in front of hundreds of people and tell me not to marry. I paused, looking him dead in the eye. Cheng Linfeng, who do you think you are? His face flushed a deep crimson and his eyes welled with something desperate. He struggled to find words, but he was silenced by his own shame. Just then, Su Wn stood up and rushed to his side, grabbing his arm. She wore a pale pink dress that made her look even more sickly. She clung to him, looking up at me with tearful eyes, her voice soft and trembling. Sister Yang, please don't blame Linfeng. He's had a bit too much to drink and isn't thinking clearly. I apologize on his behalf. Please go on with your wedding. We're leaving right now. Truly. She tried to pull him away, but he shook her off with a violent jerk. Su Wn stumbled, nearly falling, and had to catch her balance. She stood there, tears streaming down her face, looking at him piteously. Linfeng, in the past, he would have been terrified for her health and rushed to her side, but today, he didn't even give her a glance. His eyes never left me. Yang, I know you hate me, but you can't throw your life away out of spite. How long have you even known Chen Hao? Do you really know him? What if you regret this later? I laughed. Listen closely, Cheng Linfeng. I have known Chen Hao for 23 years, longer than you, and I have even known each other existed. He has protected me since we were children. He knows what I like to eat, what I'm afraid of, and what makes me happy. Marrying him isn't an act of spite or a sudden impulse. It is exactly what I want. Linfeng went numb. Chen Hao stepped forward and put an arm around my shoulder. He looked at Linfeng with a calm, steady gaze. Mr. Cheng, this is a day for celebration. I have no desire for a scene. Please return to your seat, have a drink, and give us your blessing. If you can't do that, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The silence in the room was deafening. Cheng Linfeng stood frozen like a statue. He looked at me, then at Chen Hao. Taking in the sight of us standing together, his gaze shifted from anger to disbelief, finally settling into a look of profound, agonizing realization. His lips moved as if to speak. Su Wn lunged at him again this time, gripping his arm with everything she had, her voice breaking into a sob. Linfeng, let's go please, I'm begging you, I don't feel well. She clutched her chest, gasping for air, her face turning a ghostly white. A murmur swept through the crowd. Linfeng finally turned to look at her, a flicker of hesitation crossing his face. From the altar, watching the two of them, I suddenly felt nothing but exhaustion. Cheng Linfeng, I said, my voice cold and clear, your precious Wanwan is having a heart attack, shouldn't you hurry up and save her? He snapped his head back toward me, his eyes filled with a new raw emotion, part agony, part regret. Su Wan's gasping grew louder as she began to collapse. Finally, he reached out to support her. He looked up at me one last time. Yang Yang, I'm sorry. After he finished those 4 words, he supported Su Wn and turned to leave. Whispers and murmurs rippled through the hall behind them. I watched his back disappear through the entrance, feeling absolutely nothing, no ripple of emotion, no pang of regret. Chen Hao squeezed my hand and looked down, asking softly, are you okay? I turned to him with a smile. Never better, let's get on with the wedding. The music swelled once more. Chen Hao took my face in his hands and, under the collective gaze of every guest, kissed me with a tenderness that felt like a promise. The ballroom erupted in a wave of thunderous applause and cheers. From that moment on, Song Yang Yang was finished with Cheng Linfeng. We were strangers now. Life after the wedding was blissfully quiet. Chen Hao and I didn't go on our honeymoon right away. He said a major project at the office needed his attention, and once things settled down, he'd take me on a proper trip. I didn't mind. I spent my days reading, gardening, and occasionally grabbing coffee with my best friend. It was a relaxed, independent life. Sometimes I'd stop and think, this is how a human being is supposed to live. No walking on eggshells, no waiting up for a husband who never comes home for dinner, and no more playing second fiddle to another woman's emergencies. One afternoon, while I was watering the plants on the balcony, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I picked it up and the voice on the other end made me pause. Sister Yang Yang, it's me, Su Wn. I set the watering can down and leaned against the railing. Is there a reason you're calling? There was a long silence on her end before she spoke. Sister Yang Yang, I wanted to see you just once. Could we meet? If you have something to say it over the phone. I can't explain it properly over the phone. Her voice took on a familiar, tearful tremor. Sister Yang Yang, please, just one meeting. I know I've wronged you, but I'm at my wit's end. Hearing her sob didn't stir a single emotion in me. In the past, I might have softened, thinking of her as a sick person who didn't know better. But now, Su Wn, I interrupted. Either get to the point or hang up. I have no interest in seeing you. She sniffled. It's about Linfeng. He hasn't been doing well lately. He drinks every day, and when he's drunk, he just calls out your name. Sister Yang Yang, he's truly sorry. Can't you just give him one more chance? I nearly laughed in her face. Su Wn, are you confused? Cheng Linfeng and I are divorced. I am a married woman. What exactly are you trying to achieve by telling me this? I know, she said frantically. But Sister Yang Yang, you were husband and wife for 3 years. Can you really bear to watch him destroy himself like this? Please, just go see him, talk some sense into him. He only listens to you. He only listens to me. I repeated, unable to suppress a smirk. Su Wn, I think your memory is failing you. For the last 3 years, he only ever listened to you. You said jump, he asked how high, one phone call from you and he'd run to your side in the middle of the night. And now you're telling me he only listens to me. The line went silent. Besides, I continued, he's yours now. Whether he's doing well or not is your problem to solve, not mine. Didn't you always want him? Didn't he always treat you like his most precious Treasure, well, you finally have him all to yourself. Instead of cherishing it, you're calling me to take him back. More sobbing came through the speaker. Sister Yang Yang, I know you hate me, but I never meant to break you two up. I was just sick. I just needed someone to take care of me. I didn't think it would end like this. Enough, I snapped. Save the drama for someone who cares. I'm busy. I hung up, standing on the balcony, looking down at the bustling street below. A strange sense of irony washed over me. Cheng Linfeng, look at you now. You were so certain that Wanwan can't survive without me. Well, your precious Wanwan is right there by your side. What's the matter? Not enjoying the view? I tossed my phone aside and went back to my flowers. About a week later, while I was out shopping, I ran into one of Linfeng's old buddies, Ju Hai. He used to be quite close to Linfeng. We'd grabbed dinner as a group a few times. When he saw me, he froze, then quickly hurried over. Sister-in-law. I stopped and looked at him. Don't call me that. Cheng Linfeng and I are divorced. He scratched his head, looking awkward. Right, sorry, MS Song. I nodded. What is it? He glanced around, then lowered his voice. MS Song, I don't know if it's my place to say this, but Cheng has been in a bad way lately. Maybe you could talk to him, tell him to stop trashing his life. I watched him, saying nothing. He sighed. Ever since your wedding day, he's been a different person. He's neglecting the company, drinking himself into a stupor every night and mumbling your name. Su Wn tried to talk to him, but he threw her out. He told her it was her fault he lost you a few days ago. She had another heart flare-up and called him, but he didn't even show up. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, Ju Hai looked pained. I'm serious. She was actually hospitalized for several days, and he never set foot in the ward. When she got out and went to see him, he had security bar her from the building. He told her he never wants to see her face again. I listened, but my heart remained a still pool of water. Ju Hai looked at me with pleading eyes. MS Song, he knows he messed up truly. Just go see him, talk to him. If this keeps up, he's going to be a total wreck. I looked at him and suddenly smiled. Ju Hai, let me ask you something. Sure. Back when Cheng Linfeng stood me up time and time again for Su Wn, back when he crushed my feelings into the dirt, did any of you ever try to talk some sense into him? Ju Hai went speechless. When he didn't even come home for our 3rd anniversary because he was busy with Su Wn. Did any of you ever say a single word on my behalf? His expression shifted into one of guilt. When he looked me in the eye and said it's either a postponement or a divorce, did any of you tell him he was being a fool? Ju Hai lowered his head, unable to meet my eyes. I started to walk past him, then paused. Ju Hai, he chose his path. He's the one who broke things. If he's regretful or miserable now, that has nothing to do with me. I walked away without a second glance. Behind me, Ju Hai stood there, silenced by the truth. When I got back from the mall, Chen Hao was already home. It was a rare day where he'd finished early. He was sitting on the sofa in his loungewear going through some documents. When I walked in, he looked up and gave me a warm smile. You're back, find anything good? I tossed my shopping bags onto the sofa and curled into his arms. Not really, I said into his chest. Just ran into someone I used to. No, we chatted for a bit. He set his papers aside and pulled me closer. What's wrong? Did someone upset you? I told him what Ju Hai had said. He listened in silence for a moment, then asked, Yang Yang, what are you thinking? I looked up at him. What do you mean, about Cheng Linfeng? He hesitated. If you're feeling uneasy about it, I can go with you to check on him. I stared at him for a second, then reached out and gave his waist a sharp pinch. Are you crazy? Why would I ever go see him? He winced at the pinch but kept grinning. I just didn't want you to have any lingering regrets. 3 years of history doesn't just vanish overnight. I sat up straight and looked him in the eye, perfectly serious. Chen Hao, listen to me. I chose to marry you and I am yours for the rest of my life. Whether Cheng Linfeng is dead or alive, miserable or happy, is none of my business. If you ever say something like that again, I will actually be mad. He looked at me, his eyes shining with a joy he couldn't hide. Yang Yang, you really don't regret it? Not for a second. And you never will, never. He pulled me back into his embrace, resting his chin on my head. His voice sounded thick with emotion. Good, I just never want you to feel like you missed out on something. I snuggled into him, the faint scent of his laundry detergent grounding me. Chen Hao, stop overthinking. Marrying you is the best thing that ever happened to me. He held me even tighter. After a while, he suddenly said, by the way, the project is finished. Where do you want to go for our honeymoon? I'll have my assistant book the flights. My eyes lit up. Really anywhere in the world. I started listing places excitedly. The Maldives, no, it's rainy season. How about Europe, Italy, France, or Japan for the autumn leaves? The timing is perfect. He laughed as I rambled on, nodding along. Eventually, we decided on France and Italy, a full month of traveling. The night we finalized the itinerary, I lay in bed looking at the moon, feeling a profound sense of peace. This is what a marriage should feel like. No mind games, no waiting for calls, no watching a husband walk away. Just two people living a quiet, steady, happy life together. The next morning, as we were having breakfast, the doorbell rang. I went to answer it, and the man standing there made my heart skip, not out of love, but out of sheer surprise. It was Cheng Linfeng. He had lost a lot of weight, his eyes were sunken, he had several days of stubble, and his shirt was a wrinkled mess. He looked like a shadow of his former self. If I hadn't known his face so well, I might not have recognized him. He stood there looking at me with a look of desperate, humble pleading. Yang, can we talk? Before I could say anything, Chen Hao walked over from the dining room and placed a protective hand on my shoulder. Mr. Cheng, is there something we can help you with? Linfeng's gaze flickered to Chen Hao's hand on my shoulder, his eyes dimmed, but he remained fixated on me. Yang, just 10 minutes, after that I'll leave. Looking at him, I didn't feel pity or heartache, I just felt a strange sense of detachment. When did the high and mighty CEO Cheng become so pathetic? I was silent for a few seconds, then said, "Wait here." I asked Chen Hao to go back inside and stepped out, pulling the door shut behind me. I didn't want him in our home. This was my sanctuary with Chen Hao. I didn't want Linfeng's misery tainting it. We stood in the hallway, facing each other. "Go ahead, what is it?" He spoke those 3 words with a gaze that had turned bloodshot and a voice that was utterly jagged. Yang, I know I have no right to show my face here, but these words have been rotting inside me. If I don't say them, I'll go insane. I remained silent. He took a jagged breath and began. This past month, I've done nothing but think. I thought about the last 3 years, about how I treated you. I remembered the early days of our marriage, how you'd wake up early every single day to make me breakfast, and I never even said thank you. I remembered you waiting up for me, sitting over a table of cold food at midnight because I didn't even bother to call. I remembered you saying you wanted to go to the Maldives, and I told you next time. That next time lasted 3 years. His voice cracked. I always assumed you'd just be there. I thought no matter how much I neglected you, no matter how much I ignored you for one, you'd never leave. I took your kindness for granted and mistook your patience for weakness. I was a complete and utter bastard. He raised his hand and delivered a sharp, brutal slap to his own face. I watched the scene with total detachment. I didn't feel vindicated and I didn't feel satisfied. I just felt calm. "Are you finished?" He looked up at me, a final, flickering spark of hope in his eyes. Yang, I know I was wrong. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm just begging for a chance. Let me make it up to you. Let me give you everything I owed you over those 3 years. I looked at him and suddenly smiled. Cheng Linfeng, I think you're fundamentally misunderstanding something. He faltered. You say you were wrong and you say you're sorry, but did it ever occur to you to ask why on earth I would give you a second chance? His face went white. Did I not give you enough chances over those 3 years? I waited for you to come home time after time. I forgave your absence again and again. I constantly lied to myself, saying you were just busy, and how did you repay that? I looked him in the eye, punctuating every word. Cheng Linfeng. A heart can only take so much before it dies. The damage you did can't be erased by a simple "I was wrong." I have a good life now. I have a husband who treasures me and a home where I feel safe. I have zero interest in revisiting the misery of my past. His eyes welled with tears. Yang, and one more thing. I interrupted. Don't talk to me about making it up to me. If you're truly sorry, then do me one favor. Stop bothering me. Staying as far away from me as possible is the only compensation I want. With that, I turned around, opened the door and stepped inside. As the door clicked shut, I heard a muffled, broken sob from the hallway. I didn't look back. Inside, Chen Hao was standing in the entryway waiting for me. He didn't ask a single question. He just reached out and pulled me into a tight, grounding embrace. I leaned against him for a long moment, then looked up and smiled. "I'm okay." He searched my face, his eyes full of concern. Truly. I took his hand and led him toward the dining room. "Let's eat before it gets cold." He let me lead him, though he couldn't help but steal one last glance at the closed front door. Cheng Linfeng never showed up again. I heard from Ju Hai that after that day, Linfeng fell seriously ill and was hospitalized for half a month. Su Wn tried to visit him, but he had her barred from the room. He refused to even see her face. Once he recovered, he became a different man. He buried himself in his work, staying at the office day and night. When friends tried to set him up on dates, he rejected them all, saying he was done with that part of his life. Ju-hai sounded regretful when he told me this. I just listened and said nothing. Everyone has to live with the consequences of their choices. He chose Su Wn and discarded me. Whatever his feeling now is simply the price of that choice. A month later, Chen Hao and I left for our honeymoon. Our first stop was Paris. Standing beneath the Eiffel Tower, Chen Hao took countless photos of me. His photography skills were questionable at best. Half the shots were blurry or framed at bizarre angles. I teased him relentlessly, but I couldn't stop laughing the whole time. Then we went to Provence. Even though the lavender wasn't in bloom, the countryside was breathtaking. We rented a car and drove along the winding backroads with the windows down, the air smelling of earth and fresh grass. Chen Hao kept his hands on the wheel, but he'd glance over at me every few minutes with a smile on his face. "What are you looking at?" I asked. "You," he said. "Seeing you this happy makes me happy." I flushed and gave his arm a playful swat. Eyes on the road. He laughed and turned back to the view. In that moment, I realized this is what happiness is. It isn't about grand gestures or dramatic vows. It's just two people living a quiet life, filled with genuine joy in each other's company. Our final stop was Venice. We drifted through the narrow canals in a gondola, the oarsman humming an Italian folk song as the setting sun painted the city in gold. Chen Hao took my hand and whispered in my ear, "Yang Yang, thank you for marrying me." I turned to look at him. His eyes were bright with the reflection of the sunset, but mostly they were full of me. "What are you thanking me for? For believing in me, for giving me this chance," he said. "I promise to spend the rest of my life making you happy." I looked at him, and my eyes suddenly felt hot. "Chen Hao, stop it." He smiled, leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to my forehead. In that moment, a voice in my head whispered, "Song Yang Yang, you chose the right man." When we returned from Venice, life settled into a beautiful routine. Chen Hao and I moved into a new villa he had bought. Both our names were on the deed. He said the old house was his, but this home belonged to both of us. I started looking for work again. Even though Chen Hao told me he'd happily support me forever, I wanted my own career. I wanted to prove that I was more than just someone's wife. Chen Hao was my biggest cheerleader. He helped me polish my resume and did mock interviews with me. Eventually, I landed a job as a creative planner at an advertising agency. The pay wasn't huge, but the work was exciting and my colleagues were wonderful. On my first day, Chen Hao drove me to the office himself. Before I got out, he held my hand and spoke with total sincerity. "Yang Yang, if anything goes wrong at work, tell me. If anyone gives you a hard time, you don't have to stay. I've got you." I smiled, kissed his cheek and stepped out of the car. I could feel his gaze on my back until I disappeared into the building. When I finished my first day and walked out the front doors, his car was already at the curb. He was leaning against the door, holding a bouquet of flowers. When he saw me, he stood up straight and gave me a grin that was almost goofy in its pure joy. My co-workers passed by, whispering and giggling at the sight. I walked over and took the flowers, my face heating up. "What are you doing here? I thought you had a business dinner tonight." He handed me the flowers and opened the car door. "I cancelled it. It's your first day, of course I'm picking up my wife." I sat in the car, clutching the flowers, my heart feeling like it was overflowing with honey. As we drove off, I watched the city fly by and thought back to where I was a few months ago. Back then, walking out of Linfeng's house with my suitcase, I felt hollow and uncertain. Now I know that was the smartest step I've ever taken in life. You often have to walk through the wrong doors to find the right one. Cheng Linfeng was my mistake. Chen Hao is my destiny. 6 months have passed since we got married. My career is thriving, my home is a sanctuary, and I feel like I'm living in a dream. My colleagues keep asking me what my secret is for looking so radiant. I tell them there's no secret, it's just the result of a happy heart. Chen Hao hasn't changed. He still drops me off and picks me up every day, rain or shine. On weekends, we cook together or take drives to the countryside to see the mountains and the water. It's a simple life and it's everything. Sometimes, lying in bed, memories of my first marriage drift back. I remember the lonely nights, the broken promises, and the tender tone Linfeng reserved only for Su Wan. Those memories feel like they belong to a different person in a different lifetime. I thought life would continue this way forever until today. It was Friday and I finished work early. Since Chen Hao had been busy, I decided to take the subway home and surprise him with a nice dinner instead of having him pick me up. I stopped at the supermarket near the station to pick up some groceries. As I was browsing the produce section, a voice spoke from behind me, "Sister Yang Yang." I turned around and saw Su Wn. She was even thinner than before. Her skin was sallow, her eyes sunken, and she looked utterly frail. She wore an oversized grey coat that seemed to hang off her like a rag on a wire hanger. I paused, then asked calmly, "Is there something you need?" She looked at me, her eyes slowly filling with tears. "Sister Yang Yang, I came here to apologize." I said nothing, waiting for her to continue. She looked down, her voice breaking. "Everything that happened, it was my fault. I was selfish. I knew Lin Feng was married, but I kept clinging to him, using his guilt and his kindness. I thought as long as he was by my side I'd be happy. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you." She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Sister Yang Yang, I know I've wronged you beyond repair. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I just needed to say the words 'I'm sorry.'" I watched her cry, but I felt no hatred, no triumph, only a quiet sense of detachment. "Su Wn, did you come here specifically to tell me this?" She shook her head. "No, I was here on business and happened to see you, but since I did, I had to say it, otherwise I'd never be able to live with myself." I looked at her and asked quietly, "How are things between you and Cheng Linfeng?" She froze, then gave a bitter, hollow shake of her head. "Linfeng won't even speak to me anymore. When I was hospitalized, he never showed up. When I went to see him after I was discharged, he had the security guards block me at the entrance. Later, he sent a message through someone else telling me to stop looking for him, that whatever was between us is over." As she spoke, her tears fell even harder. "Sister Yang Yang, I truly love him. I've loved him since we were children, but I know his heart only has room for you now. He was only good to me before because he pitied me, because he saw me as a little sister. Now he won't even give me his pity." I listened to her, yet my heart remained a still pool of water. "Su Wn, did it ever occur to you that you brought this on yourself?" She froze. "You knew perfectly well that he had a family, yet you constantly used his guilt to cling to him. You made him push me away, inch by inch, time after time. Now that he's finally discarded you, you come to me crying. Did you really think I'd offer you sympathy?" Her face turned a ghostly, ashen white. I looked at her, leaning into every word. "Su Wn, everyone has to answer for their own choices. You chose to use any means necessary to keep him, and now you have to live with the consequence of losing him. I chose to leave him, and that's why I have the life I have today. Don't come to me for an apology. I don't want it. Now leave." With that, I pushed my cart right past her. I heard the muffled sound of her sobbing behind me, but I didn't look back. That night, I told Chen Hao about the encounter. He went quiet for a moment after listening, then asked, "How are you feeling about it?" I leaned into his chest, feeling lazy and content. "I don't feel anything. She has nothing to do with me anymore." He looked down at me, a smile dancing in his eyes. "Really, really?" I looked up into his eyes. "Chen Hao, that chapter of my life is closed. There's only room for you in my world now." He smiled, leaned down, and kissed my forehead. "Good, that's all I needed to hear." Outside, the moonlight was perfect, spilling into the room with a gentle silver glow. Tucked into his arms, I felt like this was more than enough for one lifetime. Another weekend arrived. Chen Hao actually had the weekend off for once, so we planned a trip to a farm in the suburbs. We heard there were orchards for picking fruit, authentic country cooking, and a small lake where we could go rowing. I was up early packing our things. Chen Hao was still asleep, but the noise woke him up. He reached out a drowsy arm and pulled me back by the waist. "So early?" I patted his hand away. "It's not early, it's 7 o'clock. Get up, we said we'd leave by 8. He buried his face in the pillow and groaned. 5 more minutes. Looking at him acting like a stubborn teenager, I couldn't help but laugh. Who would have thought that the formidable CEO of the Chen Group was just a big boy who loved to sleep in when he was at home? I eventually had to strip the blankets off him before he'd reluctantly crawl out of bed. We arrived at the farm around 10. The autumn sun was warm and inviting. The farm was quiet and peaceful, with only the occasional sound of birds or a distant rooster, making the surroundings feel incredibly serene. We started by picking fruit. It was peak apple season, and the trees were heavy with bright red fruit. Chen Hao carried the basket while I did the picking. After a few, I turned around to find him holding up his phone. snapping pictures of me. Again, I shot him a look. How many have you taken? Is your storage even big enough? He lowered the phone with a cheeky grin. It is, I specifically bought the model with the most storage just so I could fill it with photos of you. I felt my face heat up and gave his arm a sharp pinch. He didn't even flinch, he just stood there grinning at me. After the apples we went for lunch. The food was authentic, slow-stewed farm chicken, wild greens, and a salad made from vegetables picked that morning. I ate until I was completely satisfied, leaning back in my chair, unwilling to move. Chen Hao found my food coma hilarious. Full, stuffed, I said, patting my stomach. That was way too good. He stood up and reached out a hand. Come on, let's walk down by the lake to help with the digestion. We strolled slowly along the shore. The water was crystal clear. You could see the reeds and the tiny fish darting through the shallows. The sunlight danced on the surface, making the water shimmer. Chen Hao held my hand, walking so slowly it felt like he wanted to stretch this moment into eternity. When we reached a massive weeping willow, he stopped and turned to face me. Yang Yang, yeah. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a ring. It wasn't a wedding band, we had already exchanged those. This one was far more delicate, featuring a stunning pink diamond that caught the light brilliantly. I was stunned. He looked at me with a gaze so tender it felt like I could melt into it. Yang Yang, today is the 23rd anniversary of the day we met. My heart gave a sudden, violent thud. 23 years ago today, you came to my house to play for the first time. I was only 5 years old. I remember you had 2 little pigtails and you hid behind your mom to peek at me. Even then I thought, this girl is so beautiful. He smiled and kept going. Then you moved away and we were apart for years, but I never forgot you. I studied hard and worked hard to build my business just so that one day I could stand in front of you and tell you that the little boy who promised to marry you had finally grown up. My eyes began to sting. He took the ring out and looked at me earnestly. Yang Yang, thank you for marrying me. Thank you for giving me the chance to take care of you for the rest of my life. This ring is what I owe you. Our wedding happened so fast, and I didn't get the chance to buy you something truly special. I'm making up for that today. He slipped the ring onto my finger. It was a perfect fit. I looked down at it, the pink diamond refracting the sunlight into 1,000 tiny sparks. I looked up and saw his eyes shining. Chen Hao, he pulled me into his arms, resting his chin on my head, his voice slightly muffled. Yang Yang, I'm going to love you for the rest of my life. Leaning against him, listening to his strong, steady heartbeat, my nose felt tingly and my eyes grew hot. After a long while I whispered, Chen Hao, thank you. He looked down at me. For what? I looked him in the eye and said with everything I had, thank you for letting me know what it finally feels like to be truly loved. His eyes reddened too. We stood there under that old willow tree for a very long time, just holding each other. That night back at home, I wore both rings on my finger. I couldn't stop looking at them. Chen Hao was sitting nearby reading a book, occasionally glancing up at me with a smile. Stop staring at it, it's not going anywhere. I thrust my hand toward him and wiggled my fingers. Is it pretty? He caught my hand and pressed a kiss to my knuckles. It's beautiful, but not as beautiful as you. I blushed, pulled my hand back and gave him a playful glare. He just laughed and leaned in to kiss my cheek. Outside, the moon was full and bright. I thought to myself, this is what happiness is. It's not some explosive drama or cinematic vow. It's these quiet, steady days, these ordinary moments, being loved and loving someone in return. It's been a life worth living. Time flies. And another year has passed. In this past year, my career has hit a new stride. I got a promotion, a raise, and I'm now mentoring a few new hires. Chen Hao's company is also expanding. He opened 2 more branches last year. He's busy, but he has never once used that as an excuse to neglect me. He still drops me off and picks me up every day without fail. On weekends, he's more than happy to take me shopping, to the movies, or out to a nice dinner. He's even more attentive now than when we were first dating. My colleagues joke that he isn't just a husband, he's the gold standard boyfriend. Hearing that always makes my heart swell. Tonight, Chen Hao came home a bit late. I was curled up on the sofa watching TV when I heard the door. He walked in holding a bouquet of flowers. More flowers. I smiled as I took them. What's the occasion this time? Why the flowers? He kicked off his shoes and sat beside me, his expression unusually serious. Yang Yang, there's something I need to tell you. My heart sank. I thought something had gone wrong at work. I sat up straight. What is it? You can tell me. He looked at me, silent for a few seconds before saying, Cheng Linfeng came to see me today. I blinked, stunned. In the last year and a half, that name had almost entirely vanished from my life. I rarely thought of him, and when I did, it was as if I were remembering a stranger who had no bearing on my world. What did he want? Chen Hao took my hand and spoke slowly. He said he wanted to see you just once. He said he just needs to say a few things. He knows he has no right to see you, but he feels like he can't move on with his life until he says them. I looked at him and said nothing. He continued. I didn't give him an answer. I told him I had to ask you first. If you want to see him, I'll arrange it. If you don't, I'll tell him to get lost. A warmth spread through me. This man, he was always like this, respectful, never making decisions for me. I leaned into him and thought for a moment. How is he doing? I had someone look into it, Chen Hao said. His company hit a major rough patch last year. It nearly went under. He's spent the last 6 months trying to raise capital. He's lost a lot of weight, and he looks like he's aged a decade. Most of the friends who could help have already stepped up, and those who couldn't have mostly disappeared. I remained silent. And Su Wn? I asked. They haven't been in touch for a long time. I heard she tried to reach him a few times, but he refused to see her. Eventually she gave up, married a businessman, and moved down south. I felt no ripple of emotion hearing that. The people who once caused such turmoil in my life were now just characters in someone else's story. I looked up at Chen Hao. What do you think? Should I see him? Chen Hao looked at me with those tender eyes. Yang, that's your call to make. If you think seeing him will help you close that door for good, then do it. If you think it's a waste of time, then don't. Whatever you decide, I'm right behind you. I thought about it for a beat, then said, let's do it. I'll see him. The place Cheng Linfeng chose was a quiet little tea house. I went alone, without Chen Hao. Before heading in, I stood outside for a moment, catching my reflection in the glass window. The woman in the glass wore an elegant dress and light makeup. Her expression was relaxed, and a faint smile played on her lips. She was a world away from the woman who, 3 years ago, spent every waking hour in misery, waiting for a husband who wouldn't come home. I pushed the door open. Linfeng was sitting by the window. When he saw me, he stood up abruptly. He had truly aged. Half his hair had turned white, the wrinkles on his face were as deep as scars, and he had grown gaunt to the point of being unrecognizable. He was, however, impeccably dressed in a dark grey suit and a crisp white shirt, his tie knotted with precision. I sat down across from him. Please sit. He seemed to snap out of a daze and slowly lowered himself into his seat, his eyes never leaving my face. Yang, how have you been? Good, I said. Very good. He nodded, his eyes rimming with red. That's good to hear. After a heavy silence, he pulled an envelope from his pocket and pushed it across the table toward me. What's this? What you're owed? He said, when we divorced, I was a bastard. I gave you nothing. It's been weighing on me all these years. This is the money I've saved up over the last 2 years. It's not much, but I hope you'll accept it as a token of my sincerity. I looked at the envelope but didn't reach for it. Cheng Linfeng, I'm not short on money. His hand froze in midair. My husband treats me very well. Whatever I want, he provides. Keep your money. He withdrew his hand and looked down, his shoulders trembling slightly. After a long while he looked up with bloodshot eyes. Yang, I'm sorry. I looked at him calmly. You've said those words before. I know, his voice cracked. But I still need to say them. Yang, I am truly sorry. I was such a fool back then, so arrogant. I assumed you'd always be there waiting for me. It never crossed my mind that you would actually leave. I never imagined what it would feel like to lose you. He wiped a hand across his face. These past few years I haven't been able to sleep every time I close my eyes. I see your face. I think about the meals you cooked, the way you looked waiting up for me, every word you ever said. I'm haunted by regret. Yang, I regret it so much it hurts. I watched him, feeling no hatred or triumph, only a faint sense of irony. Was this really the once high and mighty, untouchable Cheng Linfeng? Cheng Linfeng, I said softly, let the past be the past. He looked up at me. I don't hate you anymore, I continued. Hating someone is too exhausting, and I have no room for it in my life. I have a wonderful life now, a husband who treasures me, a stable home, and a job I love. I have everything I need. The tears finally spilled over. Yang, I stood up. Live your life well and take care of yourself. Let's leave it at this. With that, I turned and walked out, stepping out of the tea house. The sunlight hit me, warm and inviting. Chen Hao's car was idling at the curb, and he was leaning against the door waiting for me. The moment he saw me, he stood up straight and gave me a brilliant smile. I walked over and he pulled me into his arms. Are you okay? I'm fine. He looked down at me, his eyes full of concern. Home, home. As the car pulled away, I felt a lightness in my chest I had never known before. The past was truly behind me from now on. There was only the man beside me and the beautiful, steady life we shared. Chen Hao kept one hand on the wheel and reached out with the other to take mine. His palm was warm and dry, reliable, just like him. I squeezed his hand back, a smile spreading across my face. Sunlight flooded through the window, bathing us in warmth as we drove toward the house we called home. Life flowed on peacefully. Sometimes I wondered what my life would look like if I hadn't left Cheng Linfeng. I'd likely still be that resentful woman waiting for a husband who didn't care, acting as an unpaid maid, suffering through endless neglect while Su Wan's heart conditions consumed my youth. Every time I thought about it, I felt a surge of gratitude for my past self's decisiveness. One evening, Chen Hao took a call, and his expression turned a bit strange. When I asked him what was wrong, he said his mother had called. There was an emergency, and she wanted us to come to the family estate the next day. I felt a bit apprehensive since the wedding. My mother-in-law had been decent enough to me for her to call us over so urgently. I worried something was wrong. The next morning we drove to the estate. As we walked in, I saw her sitting on the sofa next to a young woman. She was quite beautiful, wearing a floral dress and looking very sophisticated. When she saw us, she stood up and smiled at me, though her eyes kept drifting toward Chen Hao. I felt a knot in my stomach. I had a pretty good idea of what was happening. My mother-in-law gestured for us to sit and took the young woman's hand. This is Xiaoya, my best friend's daughter. She just returned from studying abroad. Xiaoya, this is my son Chen Hao, and his wife, Song Yangyang. The woman, Xiaoya, gave Chen Hao a sweet haogage, before turning to me with a brief nod and a polite sister-in-law. The way she said haogage made my skin crawl. Chen Hao frowned, his tone flat. Mom, what was so urgent? She smiled breezily. Nothing major. Xiaoya is new to the country and doesn't know her way around. I thought since you're all the same age, she could stay here for a few days and you two could show her around. I understood perfectly. This wasn't about getting to know the city, it was a setup. My mother-in-law clearly wasn't satisfied with me and was trying to find someone better for her son. I looked at Chen Hao, his face had darkened. Mom, Yang Yang is busy with work and so am I. We don't have time to go sightseeing. If Xiaoya wants to explore, hire her a tour guide, I'll pay for it. My mother-in-law's smile faltered, and Xiaoya's eyes immediately welled up as she looked piteously at Chen Hao. Haogage, are you saying I'm not welcome? I'd had enough. I stood up and looked at my mother-in-law. Mom, since you have a guest, we'll head out. We have things to attend to at the office. I grabbed Chen Hao's hand and led him out. Once outside, he pulled me into a hug. Yang Yang, don't be mad, that's just how my mother is, I'll deal with her. I leaned into him, feeling a bit low. I'm not mad, I just find it pathetic. Does she really think I'm not good enough for you? He held me even tighter. Don't be ridiculous. If anything, I'm the one who isn't good enough for you. Don't listen to her, we have our own life. I looked up at him. Chen Hao, be honest with me, was Xiaoya the girl your mom wanted you to marry? He was silent for a moment, then nodded. She mentioned her a few times before, said our families were a good match. I rejected her every time. I thought she'd given up, but I never expected her to bring the girl into the house. I felt a bit of a sting, but seeing how nervous he was about my reaction, I couldn't help but smile. Fine, let's just go home. He searched my eyes. Yang Yang, are you truly not angry? What good would being angry do? I patted his cheek. As long as your heart belongs to me, I'm not worried. His eyes reddened slightly, and he pressed a kiss to my forehead. Yang Yang, you're the only one for me forever. That night I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. I knew my mother-in-law wasn't happy with me. My background was ordinary, and my job was modest, certainly not a match for a billionaire's son. She hadn't shown it before, likely because she saw how much Chen Hao loved me. Now that she had brought that woman home, she was done pretending. I leaned back on the sofa, feeling a bit troubled. Chen Hao came out of the kitchen with a glass of warm milk and handed it to me. Still thinking about earlier, I took the milk and nodded. He sat beside me and put an arm around my shoulder. Yang Yang, don't worry, I'll handle my mother. If she can't accept you, then I won't go back there. We'll live our own lives. We don't need her approval. I looked at him, feeling a wave of warmth. Chen Hao, is that right? She is your mother? She is, he said, but you're the person I'm spending the rest of my life with. If I don't protect you, what kind of man am I? I leaned my head on his shoulder. After a while I whispered, "Chen Hao, thank you." "For what?" "For being so good to me." He laughed and kissed my cheek. "Silly girl, who else would I be good to?" Outside the night was deep. Inside, the lights were warm. Tucked into his arms, I felt like I could face anything as long as he was there. Chen Hao eventually resolved things with his mother. I don't know what he said to her, but after he returned from the estate that day, she never mentioned Xiaoya again. A few days later, she even came to visit us, bringing a pile of expensive supplements and holding my hand while apologizing, saying she'd been confused and asking me not to hold it against her. I knew this was likely because Chen Hao had given her an ultimatum and she had no choice but to play nice, but since she was making an effort, I played along and saw her off politely. Once the door closed, Chen Hao pulled me close. "I'm sorry you had to go through that." I shook my head. "It's fine, as long as you're with me, nothing else matters." Life continued on its beautiful course. Soon it was our second wedding anniversary. Over those 2 years, we had built a home and a steady, happy life together. My career was flourishing, and his business was thriving. We had our minor disagreements, but we never truly fought. On our anniversary, Chen Hao took the day off and brought me to a high-end restaurant. Afterward, we walked hand in hand through the streets. The early autumn night was cool and refreshing. The streetlights cast a warm yellow glow, stretching our shadows across the pavement. As we reached a plaza, he suddenly stopped. Before I could ask what was wrong, he pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a necklace, a delicate moon pendant surrounded by tiny diamonds. His eyes were bright. "Yang Yang, happy second anniversary." I took the necklace, looking at the little moon. "Put it on for me." He moved behind me, lifting my hair and carefully clasping the chain. His fingers brushed against the skin of my neck, sending a little shiver through me. He stepped back around to face me, looking at the pendant with a smile. "It's perfect." I touched the charm and looked up at him. "Chen Hao, have I ever told you that marrying you was the luckiest thing I've ever done?" He paused, then grinned, that wide, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "You have, but I wouldn't mind hearing it again." I laughed. "Marrying you was the luckiest thing I've ever done." He pulled me into his embrace, his voice low and heartfelt. "Yang Yang, marrying you was the best thing that ever happened to me." We stood in the center of the plaza, just holding each other. In the distance, fireworks began to explode, filling the night sky with bursts of color before fading away. Leaning against him, I watched the display and thought back to those long-ago nights. I thought about the nights spent waiting for a husband who didn't come, the table of cold food, and the ultimatum of postponement or divorce. Looking back now, those memories felt like another lifetime. If I hadn't gone through that pain, I might never have known what I truly wanted or what kind of man was actually worth my heart. The suffering wasn't for nothing. The pain wasn't in vain. Because of that past, I found the man who holds me like I'm his entire world. I looked up at Chen Hao. "Let's go home." He looked down with that familiar, tender gaze. "Yeah, let's go home." He took my hand and we walked slowly toward the car. Behind us, the fireworks continued to light up the sky, but I didn't look back. My home was straight ahead. Wherever he was, meeting him was the greatest gift of my life.